2nd, 2019 is called to order at 7:33 p.m. May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Banta?
Here.
Dr. Cohen? Here. Mrs. Frankel? Here. Ms. Quackenbush? Here. Mr. Rosenberg?
Here.
Mr. Santana?
Present.
Mr. Spindell?
Present.
Mrs. Wallace? Here. Mr. Barbarella?
Here. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Fairlawn Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof distributed to the persons on the approved list, posted in the Board of Education Administrative Office, and sent to the Bergen Record and the Star Ledger. The announcement posting for the work session, along with the date, place, and time thereof, was distributed on March 29, 2019. The items to be discussed during the closed work session, if needed, we will have a closed session, of the April 22nd, 2019 work session may include personnel matters, student matters, legal matters, negotiations, and/or grievances and tactics and techniques utilized in protecting public safety and property. The results of these discussions will be made public as soon as possible. Would you please join me in flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our superintendent, Mr. Nick Garcia, and Nick is going to go from there for...
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before we jump into tonight's agenda, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge what took place in Fairlawn about 8 days ago. We had a student pass away unexpectedly. A shock that rocked this community on Sunday night, and I just want to, say how sorry I am, that this family is going through this. It was unexpected. It was the unthinkable that no one should ever have to deal with. But as superintendent, I just wanted to publicly, say here that that this family is in our thoughts and prayers. Anything we can do for this family to help them through this difficult time, we will do. I also want to talk about this community and this school district and how, at this time, everybody did step up. From it happening on a Sunday night to being on the phone all night from Monday morning to Camille DeFranco, Dr. Hesney, Mr. Gorski, how impacted his building was here, Dr. Hesney, Mr. Grubman, our child study team, Effective School Solutions, Care Plus, everybody being there the next morning, everybody reaching out by phone, our neighboring districts, Paramus, saying, I remember what you did for us last year. It really just, once again, brings to light what a special place this is for everybody to come together for this family during this difficult time. And I just wanted to point that out. I think it would be right if we did a moment of silence right now for the Tawajas family. So I asked if we could just take a couple seconds to do that. Thank you. The next thing, we have a presentation on the district performance report, but before we do that, I just want to speak about, on the work session agenda, you will see, besides the district performance report, an update is our website. The Fairlawn School District will be transitioning to a new district website. It'll be coming out of the superintendent's office. I mean that, when I say that, I mean Liz Wellenhorst, who's here right now, Wendy Pettit, and myself. All communication for that website will be spearheaded out of the superintendent's office, considering that so much information comes out of there. We'll still have all our buildings who will be posting and have their individual sites that fall under that website. It'll be new, updated information. There's been a lot of great information on our website over the years, but that's exactly what it's been, a lot of information over the years. So this gives us an opportunity to take a step back, look at our website, say it's 2019, and say, what is our vision? What is the communication that we want to get out there? We're utilizing a social media platform this year. we have Peach Jar, we have a lot of new things going on. A lot of people using their, I don't even know where my device is, it's under here somewhere, their phones, their apps. And we thought it was a good time for us to, take a step back and say, this is what we want to do as a district to, communicate with the community, with our students, with our parents, whoever wants to access it. So right now we're transitioning to a new website for the district. We're very excited about that. Liz has been working tirelessly on this project. We are shooting for a deadline of the summer. I'll call it that. We've said June 1st, July 1st, we started with August 1st, and then we got very aggressive and bumped it up a little bit, and then we realized how busy our office was, and then we pushed it back a little bit, but we were hoping to do it sometime during the summer, so it's up and ready for the beginning of the school year. So we're really excited about what it's going to look like, and I just wanted to update everybody on that and where we are with it. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lacatina, who's going to present on the district performance report. I spoke at the last meeting, I believe it was, saying that we would be giving an overview of our district performance report that encompasses district test scores, graduation rates, attendance, all kinds of great information on our district. Individual schools are being presented at the PTO meetings. Those meetings, some of them took place, some of them are scheduled to take place over the next month or so, but individual schools are being presented by the building level principals. This is, this is a district overview of our district-wide district performance report, because the whole report is 400 plus pages long. So you'll also see in here recommendations that we are making moving forward as part of the district performance report. So without further ado, Dr. Lacatina.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. As Mr. Garcia said, we're going to be talking about our district performance report. The district performance report is actually the newest version of the New Jersey State Report Card that used to come out from the NJDOE every year. Every school gets a report card or a district or a performance report, and the district gets one as well. So we're going to talk tonight about how our students did as a district. And then later in the presentation, as Mr. Garcia said, I will talk about, we obviously always look at the district data as well as all the school data, and sort of looking across all the schools, are there any areas that we want to talk about or take a deeper look at? So what is a district performance report? As Mr. Garcia already said, there's lots of data that's in it. It's not just test scores. Test scores is one part of it. It is about 41 pages long, but it also talks about demographics and chronic absenteeism, graduation rates, college and career readiness. Mr. Garcia sent home a link to all the families that if you wanted to take a look at it, he had sent that to everybody, and it's all public information online. So
Is this better?
I just need to be able to see it a little bit too.
Good.
Thank you. Good.
Better? A little better?
It's going to be a little
Front
difficult.
seats in the front too, if it helps.
Yeah, it's going to be a little difficult to see because I have charts on there and the numbers are going to be about this big anyway, so we're going to do our best. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is highlight some of those areas in which our students perform particularly well. We're going to highlight some areas where we can continue to do better, and just some interesting information that was included within the report itself. So the first thing I wanted to point out was the demographics. And as I said, there's no way anybody's going to be able to read this. There's no way. It's small. You can, grab it online. But basically what I wanted to point out is that, the makeup of our students has stayed, relatively stable over time. The home languages tend to be the same with English, Russian, Spanish, Hebrew, the top languages spoken in district. But what we do see when we look at our enrollment trends is that, as we all know, we are gaining about 100 students per year. So that's the big, obvious piece of information on all of these charts. The next part that this report talks about is student growth. So what happens every year when a child takes a PARCC test, which is now NJSLA? When they take that PARCC test, what happens is if I score a 700 as a student here in Fair Lawn, I get put into a group of students from across the state that also scored a 700, let's say in math. And I am compared against those peers who scored similarly the following year to say, how well did I do compared to all the other kids in New Jersey that scored 700? And that's called a student growth percentile. So basically, there's a certain standard that the state sets for how much growth students should be making from year to year. And if we look at the parts that are circled in ELA and in math, we either met the standard set by the state of New Jersey, or we exceeded the standard in certain areas. The state scores us not only as a district-wide group, but they break it down into 9 subgroups. And I'm just going to read them because, again, I understand you can't see from there. So white, Hispanic, Black or African American, Asian, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, American Indian or Alaska Native, 2 or more races, economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, and English language learners. Those are the subgroups that the state looks at across the board for most of the data I'm going to be talking about tonight. But again, as a district, when you look at everybody, our students met the standard for anticipated growth or exceeded the standard. There are other measures of student growth that the state talks about. What they do is they show us, what is the growth according to performance level, but the piece I want to point out today is what is the growth by grade. This information is only provided for grades 4 through 8 in ELA and grades 4 through 7 in math. We, at a minimum, our students make typical growth, which is great. Last year, our grade 5 students had high growth in ELA. That's not always the same year to year, but there are areas where we will have spikes. In math, we had high growth in grade 4. I want to point out, though, in middle school, grade 6, we had typical growth, but it's a 39. It's kind of on the lower side of typical growth. So that's an area that while we are growing, as is expected, it's an area that we really want to take a look at because we know that we tend to see this dip in our middle school math grades, and so that's something that we look at. So while it's typical, it's still something you'll see later on that we want to address. The next 2 slides are about proficiency. So we talked about growth before. How well are students growing and progressing every year in ELA and math? This is about proficiency. What is the percentage of students as a district? What are the percentages of students within all these categories that are meeting proficiency levels? So what happened was back in 2015-16, we had baseline data that the state used. The ultimate goal is in the year 2030, we want 80% of our students to be proficient in ELA and 80% of our students to be proficient in math. That's what the State Department has set out. So based on how we scored back in 2015-16, they made these little increments for us and said, this is the percentage of students you need in the 16-17 school year, the 17-18 school year. And so they wanted us to get higher and higher percentages of students achieving proficiency or mastery in English language arts and math, so that 80% of our students met that by the year 2030, which is quite a long time away. I am happy to say that in the area of ELA, that again, district-wide and every subgroup has met the target, whatever that target happens to be. And the target could be different for different subgroups. Because again, they took the data from a particular year and said, this is where the students are now. So each individual subgroup has a different target. But regardless, we have met the target in every area as a district. For math, they did the same thing, same exact process, and once again, we have met the target for every subgroup. If you had really good vision, you would see that one of these says met goal, and that means that already in the year 17-18, because these are last year's scores, we've already met the goal for 2030 in certain areas. So if you see met goal when you look at your performance reports for your schools, that means we've already made the ultimate goal. This is a new area. They never used to report out specifically on how our English language learners were acquiring the English language. They talked about how did our English language learners do in math, how did they perform in ELA, but not what is their level of English proficiency. This is brand new. So you can see in this red circle here, our students take something called an access test. Every ELL student, grade K through 12, it's called access. It's listening, speaking, reading, and writing the English language. And the target is they were hoping that 56.6% of our students were demonstrating growth in their English proficiency. 75.4% of our students are demonstrating growth. We've exceeded the target. So that was really nice for us to see. It's actually the first time we've gotten this type of data. So it's really encouraging for us to see that our English language learners are doing very well in the area of acquiring the English language. This slide talks about the percentage of students district-wide that participate in PSATs, SATs, ACTs. And I wanted to just point out something. Several years ago, we made a decision as a district that we wanted all of our 10th grade students to participate in the PSAT. So we actually, the budget supports that, and we pay for all of our 10th grade students to take the PSAT because we believe it's an important assessment for them to get some practice with, and we want them to do that. So while the state average is 85% of students take the PSAT, our 10th and 11th graders taking it is 95.8% of our students. So we're pretty proud of that, and it is something that several years ago we just believed was an important thing to put into place. This slide talks about AP and dual enrollment, and we back in October talked about AP exams and how our students did when we reported at the October board meeting. Today what I wanted to point out was our dual enrollment. We often have discussions about that on the board, and we basically have 59.4% of our students sitting in dual enrollment courses. So we have 3 courses that are offered through Bergen Community College, and we have 20 courses that are offered through Fairleigh Dickinson, courses like culinary and childcare and web design, accounting 1 and 2. These are courses that students, when they take it, as long as they get a C or higher, they can opt to pay for those college credits. 59% of our students don't choose to do that, but if they wanted to gain those college credits, that is available to them while they're sitting in high school classes to get college credit. CTE and SLE. This is an area in which we want to continue to do better. So CTE is career and technical education programs. We currently don't have any career and technical education programs. That's why we came up with a 0. 7.3% of students participate in a career and technical education program throughout the state. So I'm going to be addressing what are we going to do to improve that. We've already started those discussions last year before this data even came out. And so I'm going to get to that a little bit later in the presentation. Structured learning experiences, those are things like internships and school to work. So we have 4% of our students that participate in those types of programs compared to 3.3% across the state. And I'm going to again talk about what do we currently do and what are we planning on doing to try to raise those numbers in the future. These are really important programs for our kids. It's important to get work experience and to learn technical skills. And so this is an area that we know we have, Mr. Barbarullo is saying absolutely, and we recognize the importance of this. I mean, in the dinosaur ages when I went to school, I always remember classmates leaving and spending half a day in the high school and then leaving and going to these outside programs. And over the years, schools have kind of gotten away from it. But it's a big push again, and we recognize that we need to have this for some of our students. This is a slide on visual and performing arts. So this is an interesting one. Visual and performing arts is made up of 4 different areas: music, dance, drama, and visual arts. So we do really well with music, we do really well with visual arts in both the middle school and the high school. So we have almost 100% of our students in music enrolled in a music course in the middle school, 17.5% of our students at the high school. The areas where we don't do as well is dance and drama. Now, we have a high school phys ed teacher who says, we do dance. We do dance in our phys ed classes, which we do, K through 12. But the state says it needs to be a certified dance instructor that's teaching the dance classes, and we don't have that. Same thing with drama. It's supposed to be a certified theater or drama teacher. We have it at the high school. We offer that at the high school, but we don't offer that at the middle school. So that's why those scores are the way that they are. Very difficult to come by dance certified teachers, which is why only 2% of the schools across the state even really have that going on. So that's why you see those numbers where they are. We're going to move on to graduation rates. So graduation rates, the state has a goal. They have 4-year graduation rates, students that graduate in 4 years, and then they also report out on students that graduate in 5 years. The goal is to have 95% of our students graduate within 4 years, and 96% of our students graduate in a 5-year program. And there are 3 areas where we did not meet that criteria. So our Hispanic population did not meet the 4-year goal or the 5-year goal at the high school. The goal, as I said, is 95%. We had 92.4% of our Hispanic students graduate within 4 years. For the 5-year target, right now it's at a 95.7%. We haven't gotten to that 96% yet until 2030. And again, 92% of our Hispanic students graduated within 5 years. The other place where we did not meet that target is for students with disabilities. They met it in the 4-year group, but when we looked at the students that we wanted to graduate in a 5-year program, 91.7% met it, as opposed to the 94.8% target. And again, I'm going to talk in a few slides about what we want to do to help improve those rates. The good news about graduation, because it's not all bad, good news about graduation trends is that our graduation rate is on the rise. We graduate 97.6% of our students, and our dropout rate is decreasing. So that's really nice. We only have 0.1% dropout rate in the district. So that's the flip side of the graduation data. This slide is on chronic absenteeism. So I'm going to explain first what that means. Chronic absenteeism basically means when a student is absent 10% or more of the possible days. So if there are 180 possible days and you are out 18 of them, you are chronically absent. If I'm a student that's only here for 100 days, when I reach 10 days, I'm considered chronically absent. That's the State Department of Education's conversation. The good news is that we have met the target for chronic absenteeism as a district. But when you start looking at the individual schools, this is actually the biggest concern that comes up over and over and over again when you look at individual schools. So we're going to talk about that again in a little bit. As a district, we look great, but if we don't look at other data, it doesn't tell the entire story. So this is the accountability summary. So this is kind of everything that's in the report boiled down into one pretty colorful chart. What you don't want to see is red. So green, we met the target. Blue, we met the goal already. So we're years and years ahead. Some of the blue is also exceeding the standards, which is phenomenal. It's the red that we don't want to see. And this red is what I just talked about with graduation. So as a district, we have 3 areas, and that is 4- and 5-year graduation rates for Hispanics and 5-year graduation rate for students with disabilities. Everything else we have met or we have exceeded. And this is what we really want to take a look at. This shows us that we have no schools, based on district data and individual school data, we have no schools that are identified as requiring comprehensive or targeted support. So the State Department gives us all a grade, which we'll talk about in the next slide. And if you fall into the lowest, in the 5th percentile or lower, you are a comprehensive school. If on top of that you have subgroups of students, let's say economically disadvantaged, that over the course of 2 years fail every indicator, you are also a targeted. So you can be as a whole needing help, comprehensive school, and or also have some targeted groups, subgroups that we have to take a look at and provide support for. We don't have any of those in Fairmont. So let's talk about that scoring piece that I just mentioned. The State Department came out with a way to score schools this year. And what they did was they took a lot of the factors that I talked about. Scores on achievement, scores on growth, scores on graduation rates, English language proficiency, and chronic absenteeism rates. And what they did was they gave each one of them a weight. This is worth 10%, this is worth 20% of your overall score. And they came up with a numerical value for every school in the state of New Jersey from 0 to 100. What this is showing you, however, is that not every school is calculated the same way. If you have 20 or more English language learners in your school, and if you're an elementary school, these are the weights. If you're a high school, you have different weights. If you are a mixed grade school, you have different weights. But now let's say we don't have 20 English language learners, you are weighted differently. So while they came up with this scoring plan, it's not exactly apples to apples when we're comparing things. It's not exactly consistent because there are different factors that are used depending upon the makeup and diversity of the buildings, and things are weighted differently. But this is what the State Department has used to score every school. Okay? So what we did, before I skip to the next slide, as I said, this is about overall district view. But you can't do the district view without obviously taking a look at the school performances as well. So we sit as an administrative group, individually in groups, and we talk about how we do, and we look at data. And so we looked across the data for all of the schools to see, are there any trends that we need to be concerned about? And in reality, the only trend we saw was chronic absenteeism. Everything else was a little something here and a little something there. But we found about 7 kind of takeaways that we want to focus on. That while it's not consistently evident in every building, it's things we want to look at and see if we can continue to improve, because the status quo is just not good enough. We want to continually get better. So these are basically the 7 areas that we want to look at and come up with a continuous improvement plan for, so that we are focused on these things moving forward. Chronic absenteeism is the first one, and the most evident one. As I alluded to earlier, we want to talk about middle school mathematics. We want to look at the performance of our English language learners, not in how they're obtaining the English language, but how they're performing in ELA and math. We want to look at the performance of our students with disabilities in ELA and math. We want to look at how we can improve our career and technical education. We want to look at structured learning experiences, and we want to take a look at the graduation rate. So I'm going to go through the next several slides talking about what is it that we already do in these areas and what can we do in the future to continue to improve. So let's talk about excused absences. This is probably one of the most difficult things for our families to understand, and quite frankly, sometimes we have difficulty with it. The State Department of Education has 5 things that are excused. Not illness, that doesn't count. Not vacation, not certain things that we might think is legitimate, like a legal issue somewhere you have to go to court. The State Department of Education recognizes 5 things as excused. Religious observances, and as you know, every year we come out with a list from the State Department of what religious observances are excused. So that means if a child is absent on one of those days, it's as if that child is sitting in the school. They're not going to be penalized at all as an absence. A college visit. If you're an 11th or 12th grade student, you're allowed to go to 3 college visits a year, and it's as if you're still sitting in your high school classes. Does not count as an absence. Take our children to work day. Does not count against students. Participation in observance of Veterans Day. If we have a student that is working with a veteran in a hospital on Veterans Day doing a special project, there's certain paperwork and information they need to give us, and that would excuse the child. If there's a student that's actually part of the Board of Education, they're allowed to be out that day to do Board of Education stuff on the election day, and that's okay. Those are a little new to me. Those were not always there. And if there was a busing district and like we couldn't provide the necessary transportation for a student because of something, let's say, we were closed and we provide the busing for a student to go to an out-of-district placement that is open, that child is not going to be considered absent because we just couldn't provide the transportation. This is it. If your child is sick and you bring a doctor's note, if your child has surgery and you bring a doctor's note, not excused. It's verified. We understand it. We're okay with your child being absent because he or she is sick. But according to the State Department, they will still be counted as absent. So that being said, we need to do a good job of making sure our families understand that. We all know, the research is very clear, if children are not in school, they are not learning as well as they should be learning. We need our kids in school. I know that it's not always possible to have them here. We don't want them here if they're sick, but we obviously want children to be in the classrooms as much as possible. So what do we already do to address issues of absenteeism? We have a truancy flow chart. It's been around for years. In my 15 years or 16 years in the district, we've had it. It's a flow chart that we follow that says when children are absent, these are the steps that we take. For example, we send those Genesis letters home. After every 4th, 7th, and 10th absent, parents are notified. It's easy to lose track of how many times your child really might be out of school. So we send those home as reminders like, hey, we're at number 4, we're at number 7. Sometimes we reach out and refer parents to some community resources. Maybe there's a reason why kids aren't coming to school and we need to support you better. So we have community resources that we offer. Sometimes we involve family crisis. Sometimes we might get our ESS or Care Plus or Child Study Team members involved. We might have to do a Child Study Team referral. But we have that in place already. But what else can we do? As I said, we need to educate the parents. This is such a partnership, this issue. We can't do alone as a school. We need the help of the community and the parents. So we need to make sure that we educate our parents about what is an excused absence and a verified absence. And we're going to talk about doing that on Back to School Night, leaving information out for parents because we get a great turnout on Back to School Night. We are talking about translating our attendance policy. We've already translated it into Hebrew and Russian and Spanish. We just finished doing that. Those are our 3 top languages that are spoken other than English. We have Sure, Hebrew and Russian and Spanish. So we are translating that attendance policy to help our parents that don't speak English to understand what our attendance policy is. And we're going to give out that attendance policy in the future in our registration packets, just so, again, we are making sure parents understand. We're talking about putting in incentives for perfect attendance. And maybe, like at the elementary school, it's really hard for a 5-year-old kid not to get sick and have perfect attendance all year. So maybe in the elementary school, it's recognizing students every month, because maybe that's what they need as younger kids, that encouragement. It could be a pencil, it could be their name and a loudspeaker. That stuff goes a long way with little kids. So we're working on some kind of incentive programs to encourage students to want to come to school. Again, we're probably going to be involving Care Plus in certain situations. Is there something we can do to support you as a family? You know, there are times where kids are at home watching the younger siblings because mama has to go to work and there's nobody to watch the child who's sick. So there are certain situations where maybe we can be helpful to those families. And also intervention and referral services if there's a plan we need to put in place to better support students and their attendance. So that's the plan for chronic absenteeism. Middle school mathematics. Again, I talked earlier about that little dip that we sometimes see where the growth is not as strong as we want it to be in the other grade levels. And so some of the things we've already done is we have created some expanded placement opportunities for our special education students, additional pull-in, additional push-in, and additional pull-out opportunities we've been putting into place. And we've also tried to find a way to incorporate some math skills into our 2-semester dynamic applications class. We need more. We need to do some more. So some of the things we're going to be looking at for the future is to hold before and after school opportunities for students. Those students that are identified as struggling, maybe there's some before and after school opportunities we can provide for them. We are investigating new rotation options. One of the concerns from our middle school folks is, you know, we have these early intervention programs in elementary school, basic skills support. We have these supported classes in elementary. They go to middle school and there's not as much of that. How can we find a way to work that into our schedule? And it might be possible that you take one dynamic application rotation and then the second one, we're giving you some more support with your basic math skills. Those are some things we're talking about. We're looking into programs like Spatial Temporal Math, which is an online program that is very visual-based, really great for struggling learners and special education students, that really helps them visualize what's happening in math. And so we're investigating some of those types of programs that we can offer to our struggling students. And we're constantly reassessing the middle school schedule. Where can we find more time for math? It's what we really want to do, and we keep looking for it, and we'll see, you know, how that turns out, but that is something we know we need to try to find some more time for our students in math in middle school. Our English language learners. Again, they're doing okay, but looking across the schools, there were spots where maybe 4th grade L's in one building weren't doing as great in math, and 5th grade L's in a different building were not doing as great in ELA. And so we just noticed that the performance of L's was kind of popping up here and there in their ELA and math scores. So what can we do to help our English language learners? Well, one thing that we started last year is called Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol, SIOP. It is a method for using specific strategies when general education teachers teach our L's. And our English language learners are only with ELL certified teachers 1 or 2 periods a day. Otherwise, they're with the general education teachers. So we have now, last year, trained every middle and high school teacher that had an L in the classroom. We taught them this in a 2-day workshop. And we followed up with them this year as a follow-up workshop. How is it going? Let's talk about what you've tried in your classroom and continue to give them some additional strategies. This year, we dragged in all of our elementary teachers. And pretty much every single elementary teacher has an L sitting in their classroom. And so we trained our general education K-5 teachers this year in SIOP. We'll follow up with them next year. So we're going to continue this. It's a research-based, evidence-based strategy that works really well with our English language learners. Every year, we send all of our teachers of L's to the New Jersey TESOL conference, which is Teachers of English as a Second Language. So we are constantly providing them with professional development to continue to hone their skills. We already do after-school programs. Title III is money that we get from the federal government, which is earmarked specifically for English language learners and immigrant students. We offer before and after-school programs for those identified students. Sometimes it's with hydroponics. It's book clubs. It's a variety of different things just to provide the students with enrichment activities. We have trained 100% of our teachers of ELS in this district in Orton-Gillingham, a multi-sensory approach to reading. And it works fabulously with our ELS. 100% of our teachers of ELS have been trained in this approach. And our elementary specialists, one of whom is here tonight, our elementary science specialist, Andy Temme is here. We have him. We have 2 now elementary literacy specialists and our elementary math specialist. Having them on board has greatly helped to provide strategies to teachers, again, working with those groups of students. But we want to do more. We want to continue our PSYOP training. We realize that our teachers of ELS often do professional development as a group and subject-based. They're learning about all things ELL. And we realize, you know what, maybe they need to learn more about our science program. Maybe they need to learn more about our math program and our English reading program. So we want to involve them more in some of those other subject-based trainings next year so that they're better equipped to work with the students so that they can help them in our curriculum. We also want to change the focus of our before and after school Title III and Title III immigrant sessions. Instead of doing hydroponics, we might have it more English language arts based and more math based specifically to help them with those skills because we see that there are some struggles. Again, with the spatial temporal math or similar programs to give them more fun, focused support in the area of math. And there could be a possible reallocation of staff. So if we know that there's a school where our ELs are struggling, that might be where we put some extra help to try to make those class sizes smaller in that building, because we know that that smaller class size will help to focus more individually on the students' needs. Students with disabilities, you're going to see some similar types of approaches. Again, we talked already about the expanded placement options for our special education students. Across the district, we're really going towards this co-teaching and inclusion model, and that's really helping our students. Again, the elementary specialists, not only are they available to address the needs of our ELs, but they're available to address the needs of our special education students. And also the Orton-Gillingham training. We have about 25 special education teachers across district that we've trained in a multisensory approach to reading. We're going to continue to do that. But we also have about 35 gen ed teachers that have had that training. And just like with the ELs, our gen ed teachers are teaching our special education students sometimes 80% or more out of the school day. And so to have those teachers trained in those special skills, it's not just about training the special education teachers, it's about training the teachers that have those students for so many hours in front of them. So we have many, many teachers that are trained in Orton-Gillingham, and they're really excited to be able to use that because it really benefits everyone. We often say that the strategies we use for ELs and special education students benefit the whole class. Okay, so that's what we already do. What else are we going to do to help improve scores for our students with disabilities? Continue the Orton-Gillingham training. We have now started doing the intermediate level of training, which means that there are certain skills and strategies teachers need when they're teaching students in 3rd grade and beyond. So we're starting to train teachers in the upper grades now too, because we know we have some students that still struggle with reading even in 4th grade and 5th grade. We're going to try to put before and after school supports in, just like we were with our ELL students. We're investigating the use of Goldbook. Goldbook is this fabulous online resource that looks at students' IEPs, identifies what standards a student needs to master, and gives teachers very specific skills, very specific strategies that they can put into place to help their students reach their goals. So it looks like it's going to be a fabulous resource for our teachers, so we're looking into that. Once again, spatial temporal math, ST math, or some other type of program, and once again, possible reallocation of staff. So staff really following the needs of our students. Career and technical education. We have already at the high school, Paul Gorski and Brian Hicks, and I think some guidance counselors have already met with Passaic County Tech. They've spoken with people from Bergen County Tech to talk about what do CTE programs look like? What do we need to do in order to get CTE programs in our schools? Trying to educate ourselves. And the good news is that we believe that we already have some 3-year progressions, course progressions at the high school that might already qualify for CTE. So we are looking into that right now. Our engineering, design, architecture courses look like they could qualify, so we are working very hard to try to apply for some of that to see if we can get a program labeled as CTE. We're also trying to partner with some local VOTEC schools to see if we can offer some more opportunities for students that need the career and technical education side. Structured learning experiences. As I mentioned earlier, we already have something called senior options at the high school. We instituted it about 5 years ago, maybe. And so basically we have a gentleman at the high school that oversees our school to work programs, internship programs, and senior service programs. Right now it's really focused on seniors though. So we're trying to investigate how can we get more juniors involved with some of these opportunities, get them involved a little bit earlier. And we're also talking about how do we help our special education students participate in SLE programs. And so we are looking to possibly train 1 or 2 special education teachers at the high school so that they can help oversee these types of experiences with their own students. And in the budget, the Board of Education has supported the hiring of a transition coordinator, and that transition coordinator will also be key in overseeing all of these SLE programs. That person will go out into the community and try to get companies involved and try to secure job sites for our students. And so that's a way for us to also focus on our special education students' needs in this area. Graduation rate. Right now, our guidance counselors and child study team members are fabulous. They meet with kids starting freshman year to work out their program plan, make sure that they're on their way to meeting all of their credit requirements at the high school. But we want to try to expand that. We want to try to develop a plan where we try to identify students that are at risk of possibly not graduating. Let's try to identify them a little earlier. Let's give them whatever additional supports we can give them so they are better equipped to graduate. And the other piece, when we looked at the students with disabilities, that's an interesting area because we know that the law says we're allowed to educate our students until they're 21. So of course they're not graduating in 5 years, right? They're allowed to stay longer. So we're talking about looking at the way we code our students. So right now we don't have them as graduates until they're 21, but what we are allowed to do is we can grade them or code them as a postgraduate student. So they can graduate after 5 years. They will still have an IEP in place with post-secondary goals, but they would have been a graduate student already. And so that should, I mean, it's sort of the same thing. We're still keeping the kids for the same period of time. It's more semantics and how we're coding it in the background. Okay. So all of that being said, I wanted to end with some of the comments from the NJDOE. They came out with that whole article with all the rankings of the schools, and basically they had a few little caveats that I just wanted to share with the board and with the audience. Don't panic if your school score is low, and they tell us, and don't celebrate if it's really high. That it doesn't tell the whole story of the school performance. We're thrilled with our scores. We're doing beautifully. But it's not the only measure of how well we do as a district. There are so many more pieces of the puzzle. And again, it's not a consistent way that we score our schools. It depends on the makeup of the school. And it depends on whether they have ELLs or not ELLs. Is it a high school or an elementary school? So, you know, those are just some of the comments that the NJDOE wanted to make sure that we were aware of. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Very nice presentation, and a lot of work went into it. This time we're going to open up the comments to the board first, and then we'll open up to the public. Mike.
First of all, take a little bit of a breath. That was phenomenal. Some of the things, what I like is some of the things that we're hearing about in education committee meetings, and I'm, you know, even including tonight, is coming into fruition with this too. So it's kind of like they piggyback on each other, which is a very good thing. I want to caution one thing, and maybe it's me as a teacher. I personally, and obviously it's up to the board, do not believe in incentives for attendance, because I do not want an elementary school kid, especially any of our students, coming into school sick just so they get perfect attendance. I think it's and I've read up a lot on this subject too, that it isn't I don't believe it's a recommended practice. It's just, I mean, if a kid's sick, legitimately sick, I don't want him to try and miss an incentive because he's sick and come to school, and then we have a problem with a lot more students. It's an issue.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, which is why we were talking about, you don't make it for a whole year. You break it down into smaller chunks, and maybe part of our criteria is that doesn't count. Like, there's a lot that we haven't really worked out. The State Department actually has a whole guidance document on it, and several administrators watched a webinar that was put out last week or the week before. So we're talking about it. So those are, but thank you. We'll definitely keep that in mind.
Mark.
Yes, first of all, I want to give kudos to all of our students who actually took the test to give us these results. But there are two other groups that I also like to compliment, and those are our staff, who are excellent teachers, as well as the parents, who are very, very supportive in this community. The other question I have...
Can I say one thing before you go on to that question? Because you talked about participation. The State Department has also changed the way that they score our students, and so again, this is why I thank the parents as well. Participation actually counts very much towards our scores. State Department expects a 95% participation rate, and if you drop below that, they start negatively impacting your scores. So even though our students may score well, if we have fewer than 95% of the students taking it, the formula that they use starts to lower our scores and make us look bad. So again, we appreciate parents for having, you know, confidence in what we're doing with the testing scenario and allowing so many of our students to participate, because that doesn't happen in every district. There's really very poor participation in some places, so we thank you.
And the second question is, am I correct to say that if a student, say, came in from Arizona on a Monday and our state test was a Wednesday, that individual would have to take the test?
The student would have to take the test, but it would not count. So the State Department has very specific guidelines as far as how long a student needs to be in our district prior to the test in order for it to count in these numbers. So the child will take the test, the child will have the scores count for him or herself, but it will not be reported in here if they come that close to the testing time.
So the other question I have is, are we doing any kind of tracking of our students for those that, say, come in from kindergarten and go all the way up through the time that they're taking the test, as compared to those who came in second grade and took the test in fourth grade?
Right.
Because you probably see a different
Depending
test
upon,
result.
yeah, depending upon where the student may have gone prior to here, we do sometimes see different results, because I believe that our curriculum is very rigorous. We have high expectations, and often we have students come from other districts that are really struggling to keep up with our pace. So we don't have a lot of hard data. One thing that we've been talking about is getting something called Linkit, which is basically like a data warehouse that can store all kinds of information and allows us to run all different kinds of reports, and it would make it much easier for us to be able to do things just like that. There are so many different ways to look at the data if we use something like that, and it's something we've been having discussions about so that we really could do a better job of following that data.
I really think it would be very interesting, the results that we can
Yes,
see.
yes, like following cohorts of kids
Yeah.
that truly have been with us
Yes,
forever. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
If I'm correct, your question is like a child that started and failed on and went all the way through?
Right.
Yeah.
Compared to someone who just entered, say, grade 2 or 3.
Yeah, well, just a point before I get to Emily, I know many years ago when I first got on the board, Elise and I actually brought it up to the groups about, actually, we used to do like year to year, but we said, how about we follow one grade? Let's see how they go all the way through. And we started doing that, and it was amazing how you could see how they just kept progressing. So we were doing that for a while.
Right. Mark's talking about teasing out kids that have been with us forever
Yeah.
versus kids that haven't been with us forever. But the interesting part about this report is, again, next year, they're not the same kids. So while we see that fourth grade maybe did very well growth-wise in math, what we want to look at next year is, did they have that same kind of growth in fifth grade? Because having the same growth in fourth grade could be interesting. Maybe we have some really good fourth grade teachers, right? But it's also interesting for us to follow that data longitudinally and see what happens. So you have to really look at the data in so many different ways, because sometimes this is so isolated. And so this year, it was students with disabilities and Hispanics that are having a hard time with graduation rates. Next year, it could be a totally different subgroup, because it's not, so again, we can focus on those groups of students, but those students that didn't graduate, it's like already done. They're already out of our school system now, some of them. So we try to look at it very globally. So rather than just say, oh, well, L's in this building didn't do so well in ELA, why can't we look globally across how we approach all L's? Because next year, it could be kids in a different building that are struggling. So, you know, we're trying to target certain kids, but also taking some more global district-wide approaches as well.
Mark, you okay?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Come on.
So this is my second year on the board, and so I only have 1 year of reference, but I don't remember this kind of presentation last year, and I just really want to thank the administration for hearing a request for a little bit of a deeper dive into our data, and it's a real opportunity for us as a board to better understand this wealth of information that we have at our disposal, and I want to just translate that globally into implications for our district's long-term strategic plan, especially given that one of our buckets is an achievement for all bucket, and we really encourage the administration, if they haven't already, to go back and revise that part of the strategic plan based on these data, but certainly it also relates to the technology initiative, and that's also kind of as a fourth bucket, as an additional one of 4 buckets. And that's another thing I wanted to kind of say globally about these data and the moment we're at as a district. Two of the bigger initiatives we have is moving 5th grade from the elementary schools into the middle schools. And I am concerned as a board member about how well our 5th graders seem to be doing, and I think that's a trend in research that when you're the top dog, your scores are higher, and then when you become the bottom dog, especially at that stage of human development, there's just statistically speaking a risk of a dip. And I just want to encourage the administration to continue to be as thoughtful as they can in preventing our 5th graders from falling into the trap of the 6th grade dip in math and bringing up everybody as opposed to
Right. So in our discussions when we're talking about what does that 5th grade schedule look like in the middle school when they move, it's being very aware that we don't want to treat them like a traditional middle school child. So how do we keep them still focused on, because we know that students in our elementary schools get a lot more time in ELA and math than they do when they go to the middle school. So how do we preserve those kinds of things for our students? And recognizing the importance of things like that, the importance of being able to build those close relationships with one or two teachers. And so, yeah, we're very aware, like in those respects, that we don't want to just throw them into a world that could possibly have that kind of an impact.
And I just wonder too if it's an opportunity to think about the sixth grade too and kind of smoothing out that transition. Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, no, it is.
So some other questions I had, with the attendance policy, if students miss a threshold number of days, the principal has the discretion to have them repeat that grade, is that correct?
Yeah, so again, we don't want parents to panic because we do understand that children get sick. And we understand that there is a principal and a committee in each building that would review that if they went over that threshold and would determine promotion or not. So, you know, they take into it, so let's say a child has 15 days absent, but they have 10 doctor's notes for those 15, right? We know that 10 of them legitimately the child was sick. We're not holding that against a child. It'll count against us on chronic absenteeism numbers, but we're not going to say, well, that child, you know, went over the 14 days, we're keeping them back. So it's important to document why your child, you know, children are absent. And so what we do is we verify it. We have a code in our Genesis system that says it's been a verified absence. We've talked to the parent. We know who that child is. We as a board recognize that illness is an okay thing to be absent for. We as a board recognize that. But on the state register, we can't call that an excused absence. That's like the weird little trade-off.
The spirit of my question is less concerned about children who have health issues, more about parents who elect to take kids out for family.
Vacations.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that right to determine what to do. The principal and the committee does.
And
yes.
I just wonder if it were, in translating the attendance policy, if parents understood that they run the risk, if they so choose to make that decision for their child, that they might choose differently.
We're going to, this is
Yeah.
part of our dialogue that we give on back to school night and
Yes, we're talking about really making that very much more transparent and putting it out there so people understand.
There's people that take their kids out for vacation in the middle of the year, and it doesn't matter whether there's testing going on, they're going away, that's it.
Right, but I wonder if they understood that either they would have mandated summer school that they'd have to pay for, or their kid could be held back, like some real consequence, they might hesitate to make that same decision. Okay. So the students with disabilities, as presented in the data, is just one group, but we all know disabilities is a really mixed category. Does the state allow you to drill down to see if there's any subgroups?
The only place where the state drills down is when they talk about DLM testing, which is dynamic learning maps, and PARC, or NJSLA. So basically, the students that have the most significant cognitive impairments don't have to take PARC or NJSLA. They take an alternative assessment called DLM. So those are the only places where they really tease it out. We, on a local level, can start to tease it out because you're right. You have students that might go to resource room. You have students that might be in an LLD classroom, and the disabilities are absolutely different, and maybe how they present on their test scores could be different. But for the purposes of this data that the state is reporting on, they are all chunked together. The only students that are not in there are those maybe 36 or 40 students in the whole district that take the DLM.
Okay, yeah, I guess just to spare my question, if there's any particular subgroups of students with specific disabilities that we can identify as being needing
More
to be
than,
on that
right.
slide.
Real,
Right.
real
So,
chicken.
yeah. But the
Local data. you're
locally we can, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, my thinking and the team's thinking when we talk about those possible additional after-school supports or offering these programs that are kind of fun, that help to support students, we would look at individual students, and we would probably be less concerned about whether they came from an LLD classroom or a resource room, because you might have LLD students that do really well in math and wouldn't need it just because of their classification or their placement. So that's when we start looking at individual students and making determinations that way.
Okay, so then I just have two more questions. One is the structured learning experiences. What's the rationale for limiting it to juniors and seniors and not offering
because they're going to, in some instances, they miss school time, and they can't afford to not continue to earn their credits for graduation. So some of those students have to have earned a certain number of credits so that we can dismiss them for half a day. So like after school experiences and things like that, I'm going to defer to Mr. Gorski. Do we offer that to freshmen and sophomores, like the stuff,
The service learning.
the other service learning? Okay.
Because again, there's a community piece to a lot of that we historically have for upper class. It's certainly something that we can look at.
Right, but some of those other ones that are more like the internship and the school to work, we have to make sure that they're on track to graduate before we allow them to miss their required coursework.
Also, just that, there's certain working papers you need in certain ages that you can't work, and a lot of jobs you can't work until you're 16. So, freshman and sophomore, you're only like 14, 15, so.
It's really trying to prepare them, to expose them to careers and career skills and things like that.
Okay, and then my final question for now is, when you're developing a plan for earlier identification of students at risk for being in trouble at graduation, I'm just curious to know, what's the algorithm? Are you looking at research? I mean, I know from my own research in this area, like, you know, if a kid fails Algebra 2 in their sophomore year, that's a really important indicator for being in trouble, as opposed to, you know, like there's actual patterns in big data that you can see to get really good indicators for early detection. I'm wondering if you're looking into that at all.
We have not begun our discussions yet, but Paul and some of the, Mr. Gorski and some of the other high school administrators and our guidance counselors and child study team members, Camille and I, are going to be sitting down and really talking about that and taking a look at, you know, what we can do. I mean, we already have some supports in place, but I want to look more long-term, though. So what does this particular struggle mean for graduation? Like, not just, okay, you didn't do well on Algebra 1 Park, right? So we want to make sure that they pass Algebra 1 Park, but there's more implications, and I think that's what you're referring to. Like, more long-term implications to some of those.
If you look at the students who didn't graduate over the past 10 years and you see any patterns on their report cards or in their files, to try to start seeing what are the risks.
Yeah.
First, thank you, Dr. Agatin, a great presentation. As everybody knows, it's my first year on the board, so you know, some of what I heard was impressive. However, I have many questions. First, I would like to congratulate the teachers and the administrators, and of course, the parents and the students for going above and beyond. And as far as those meeting and exceeding the standards. I think that was a great idea, Emily, about desegregating locally the data for special ed in terms of how many days, how many absent days would trigger a child to have to repeat. I think, in my opinion, it may not matter the reason, because misinstruction is misinstruction. If you went to, let's say, to the Caribbean for 2 weeks during the school year, for 3 weeks, and you missed 3 weeks of instruction, you know, and you happen to have been in a, you know, I don't know, in an unfortunate situation that also led you to be absent for many, many days. Instructional time is instructional time, and if you're not there to learn, you know, and you get promoted to the next level, you're going to have that gap. I have a few questions. First question: are suspensions affecting us in this report, in this performance report? If a student is suspended, does that count towards
Out-of-school suspensions are absences, yes.
out of school, but not in school?
Not in school.
Which
Students on home instruction, so let's talk about students that have like, more long-term illnesses. As long as they're receiving home instruction, that also counts as being present. So that does not hurt us, just as a clarification. So students that are on bedside instruction, things like that, they're not considered absent.
When they're out of school suspension, they don't get any.
Out of school suspension, they are considered absent.
Which, from all the special ed programs that we have in the district, which of those programs are tested for the district count or the district performance report?
It
It depends on the individual student. It's not by program, it's by student. Individual decisions are made for students.
I would like to, if the board is okay, I would like to request that the schools post their performance report on the main homepage of the website. If that is not already done, would anyone have a problem with that?
I think it's
I
already.
think it's already done,
I
but we'll
posted
check.
this when I shared it with, the community and sent my.
Well, I meant that each school posts their individual school
But you-
performance report so parents can have easy access.
There is easy access. You just, the link that I put, you just click your school and it drops down and you pick whatever school you want and you'll have access to your school's report.
Right.
I'll double check though.
So was there?
I studied this school performance report thoroughly by school, not the whole district, because I just received this. And I do think we, compared to other districts, in terms of the SAT scores, we are about average. I would like to see our SAT scores go up. You know, a lot of parents, the parent might want to take their child to the technical school because of the higher SAT scores. You know, so if we can keep those parents in-house here and have a program that is budget neutral, that would be very, very beneficial if we can bring those SAT scores up.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How would we improve an SAT score when a lot of that goes on their own individual, taking their own individual
Well, that
test?
could-
So every child, let me just finish, I'm asking a question. Because every child takes the SATs, which they can take them multiple times, or the ACTs. So how would the district, because, well, I've known, I've had 2 kids go through it, I got a third going through it right now. They usually take, after, they struggle after the first time, they take a course to improve their score. So I'm just curious, how would the district do that?
Well, I just got on the board. What does the district have in place to help students prepare for the test?
I would probably say, I can't answer that. I mean, I would ask Ms. Sacatina to refer to her, but I would assume that the guidance counselors guide them to whatever help they
We
can.
do not have a separate course if that's what you're asking.
I don't mean a separate course. I mean like an after-school class, a sign-up program, summer something. You know, so the parents don't have to come out of the pocket with $2,000, $3,000 hiring a coach. In a lot of towns, in a lot of our neighboring towns, you have students that do very, very well on SAT scores, and it's because of the private coaching they get. But if we are able to do something in-house, okay, and look at some best practices, what other districts are doing, you know, and see what's on the table. And if it's cost neutral,
Well,
you find the money.
We'll look into that,
Yeah.
but that could become
And it-
contractual, so we'll have to look into that.
Yeah, and I'm not,
Wow.
we would have to pay for before and after school. We would have to pay teachers to do that.
Well, I'm not saying
So it
it's,
wouldn't be cost neutral, just
Well,
to let you know.
well,
It
from
would be in
the
our
big,
budget.
from, and this is my opinion as a board member, from the current budget, we have a budget over $100 million. I'm sure we can find a few dollars to help increase this SAT score. That's my opinion as a board member.
That's fine, we'll look into it.
And also, if parents can chip in and add a little bit, so they don't have to come up with out of their pocket with $3,000 hiring somebody from Cape Land
All
or,
right.
you know.
Well, we'll look into that, and then we'll just continue going over the report here.
I would like to know why there were no students enrolled in the AP Microeconomics and the AP Chinese Language Culture, although students were tested.
Because we don't offer those courses. But you can still take a test even if you're not enrolled in a specific course.
You mean we didn't offer during the academic year AP Chinese?
Not culture.
We have AP Chinese language and culture, 0 enroll, 10 tested.
That could be a mistake.
AP, I know you don't have to,
I
you don't have
I
to take the class to take the test, but I would like to know why.
I don't know why that is off the top of my head.
Can
Microeconomics and Chinese.
you get back to me?
I mean,
The micro just probably was not coded, because they were coded under the macro. The Chinese,
yeah, that just looks like a mistake,
that
because
doesn't
we
make
have,
any sense.
yeah, we offer AP Chinese.
Do we still have a chance as a district to rectify that?
And there's survey going out from all the superintendents of Bergen County with concerns like this, that every district has found errors. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, you cannot rectify it or change it, but everybody's trying to get together to push on some legislation, say, like, you should give us a window where we should be able to say, these are the mistakes you found, and this is, how our report is reflected. So I wrote that down.
The fact that we don't have a dance drama instruction at the middle school, that's really bothering me. But at the same time, we have these mandates from the state. They're telling us, you need to have this, you need to have that. But they don't send us the money, and we can't have every program. But, in terms of the obvious that you presented here, the graduation rate for Hispanics and a student with disability, we have to do a better job as a district. It's not a bad number, but it needs to go up. You alluded to the graduation rate being great, at 97%. You
The
said.
graduation rate is on
That's-
the rise, is what I said.
Okay. The graduation rate for whites is 97%, and it's the same as for the district, 97%. So when we say, I'm not saying you say this, but if we say the district is doing great with graduation, we have to be very careful because, we have to make sure everybody's included. Everybody's included.
That's why
And
they're looking at that to see what the problem is, they're gonna rectify it, soon, put that up there. We wanna make sure everything does.
And as you say, Dr. Lagatina, to paraphrase you, as a district, we look great. We look great on this presentation, but we have to look at the entire data. The Hispanic and the student with disability not meeting their graduation target. Is this the first year that this happened, or did this happen last year or the year before?
I have to go back and look. I don't have that data, but I'll write that down.
Can you share that with the board?
Huh? 2 years, Wilkin?
Yeah, the last 2
Right,
years.
the last 2 reports?
Yes, please. When you have the chart with the weight for schools with 20 or more English language learners and weight for schools with fewer than 20 English language learners, I think the state, in my opinion as a board member, I think the state, I guess they came up with a fair formula, They try to come up with a fair formula. So every school, like you say, is different. Every school have a different population, but at the same time, the state is accommodating all the schools so they can meet the benchmark and perform. So it's not like the state is setting anyone to fail. I do agree with the takeaways portion. Chronic absenteeism, middle school math, English language learners, students with disabilities, and graduation rates, tackling that. I will make that a priority. Career, technical education, structured learning experience, I'm fine with that, but I will make what I stated before a priority. I think we do need to communicate what constitutes an excuse absent or what doesn't. I think a lot of people are misguided. I didn't know this information. So I think the average parent, and I have a child in the school system, we may need to post this somewhere.
We will, we're gonna write up a document, actually.
I do respectfully disagree with you, Michael. I think we do need to look at whatever we need to look at to increase student attendance. I don't.
Not sicknesses.
I don't think. As a matter of fact, the Department of Education of the state of Indiana has many best practices for increasing student attendance, but primarily we need to educate the community and parents, and I commend you for bringing the idea of translating whatever needs to be translated so the message gets across. In terms of math, how long are the math and language art periods in the middle school? How many minutes?
In the middle school right now, it's 42 minutes for math and 84 minutes for literacy. Double period for literacy, single period for math. And then the dynamic applications, which is 2 marking periods, which is STEM focused, so there are some math skills built into that. But it's not specifically, grade 7 math, grade 8 math, algebra 1. They are math skills, but not as focused as...
I know in your presentation, the district is planning to constantly reassess middle school schedule. Are we also planning to reassess the math curriculum?
We always reassess the math curriculum. In fact, this year we are adopting a new math textbook. So our teachers spent last year and the beginnings of this year investigating various math series to see which we believe is best for our students. And so along with that will come curricular revisions this summer.
During departmental departmental meetings, do language art and math and special needs and ELL teachers, do they get professional time to have those professional, meaningful conversations to share with one another best practices from school to school?
Most of our department meetings are really focused on professional development and sharing. Teachers usually are asked to present.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Yes.
we need to, sorry, okay, but questions about the specific report?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we need to move on, because I got other people want to talk in the public yet.
Oh,
No, we just want to keep the specific questions, that stuff we can discuss with the administration.
I will submit the rest to the administration, but I wish I would have finished
No, you could
my
finish.
questions.
No, you could finish your questions, but you're asking about whether we're reevaluating. That's not with the report. Ask the question to the report, like your questions on data or what they plan on doing. That's all we're asking you to do. Nobody's telling you to stop asking questions. But we're not going to worry about we're recessing the math program and all that stuff. We'll talk about that later.
Well, if part of the presentation of what the district plans to do,
Yes.
she stated that they plan to reassess, what was it they plan to reassess? They're planning to reassess something in particular.
Yeah,
I would like to know if they plan to reassess the curriculum. Because the curriculum, if you know what you're supposed to teach and you know how long it will take you, what resources you need to make sure everything is on the same page. And if it's not, it's going to show.
That's all encompassed in reassessing the middle school schedule. When we're sitting in this room and we're looking at the middle school schedule and we're having conversations, and we're meeting after meeting after meeting on that, we're constantly looking at, okay, so if we expand that block of time, what type of class would it look like? What would happen at dynamic applications? Would it still be dynamic applications? Would it be a different curriculum? So that's all part of that conversation of reassessing the middle school
Can I just
schedule.
get 1 minute to finish, if I may? Okay. The Orton Gillingham training, how long have we used it for?
Or in Gillingham, we've been training teachers probably over the last 5 years.
And you find that it's an essential?
It is an incredible program.
Oh, it's a phenomenal
Yeah.
program.
People want to press teachers too.
You know, just to conclude my last 30 seconds, many people choose Fairlawn for the quality of our schools. We have great schools, but we cannot be just content with great. We want greatness. I happen to be an English language learner, myself, and even if it's 0.1%, even if it's one person, we have to make sure that we go above and beyond. And it doesn't matter where the student is, where the student lives in Fairlawn, we have to make sure we provide the best that we can for that student. And overall, the presentation was great, but I have looked at the district performance by school, and this is my first year on the board. I am not happy. I am not happy.
Just real quick, I just had one question, and then Elise, and then that should be it. Just so you know, I've been on the board 8 years, I know a few people. The one thing I've learned being on this board, and I came to meetings for 5 years before I got on this board, the number one goal of this district, and I know Mr. Garcia, when he applied for the job, is non-complacency. It has always been, we worry about every kid in this district. When he came up with all the other stuff years ago, the one thing that I found personally insulting was when people said, what school district you live in, what do you do as a board member? I don't care. I care about all 5,200 kids in the school district, as all 9 board members do and this administration does, and the teachers in this district. So I want to set that straight, that we all care about every kid. And if a kid's failing, we're going to make sure we pick that kid up and we help that child, every one of us. I have one question for you, which was a great presentation. The goal book, how would we use it? You kind of explained, I didn't know what it was, you kind of explained it, I'm just curious, how would we implement that, tell us?
I'll speak to it, and then Camille can already jump on. So goal book, what goal book does is, a lot of times, we write an IEP for a student that may have a disability. Part of that IEP, there's goals and objectives attached to it that the teacher would then have to follow in the classroom to try to close that academic gap that the child may have, depending on what the disability is. Often, that you may have 10 students in your class with 10 different IEPs and 10 different goals and objectives everywhere, and you're struggling to figure out how you may differentiate at times. It can be very difficult when you're trying to differentiate for 10 students who learn differently. What Goalbook does is a software where it'll pull, in essence, it takes your IEP, the end product, and it marries the classroom instruction, and it'll give you strategies to help that teacher differentiate for all the students in their classroom, and it directly correlates to the goals and objectives that that student has. It also will help write reports for that student, provide strategies, interventions. What Goalbook also does, though, is as much as it's talked about as a special ed product here, it's not just a special ed product. It can be looked at as an intervention for a student that's struggling, kind of maybe to what Emily was getting at before. What do we do for students that we know could be on the radar? How do we help them? How do we help them with behaviors? How do we help them with whatever it may be? So I always look at it as almost like we have a pre-referral intervention manual by Hawthorne that we use for our INRS teams. To me, this is like a computerized version of that, and just helps us take our students in and make sure that nobody slips through the gap.
No, you didn't.
Still remember some special ed?
Point of reference. Can we get the information on the cost of that?
Yeah, we'll go through the finance committee. Elise.
I just wanted to ask, with the math and the middle school thing, I'm not sure if I remember this correctly, doesn't the fact that we have the Algebra 2 kids in the middle school, like in the 8th grade, taking Algebra 2 and Algebra 1, doesn't that affect why those grades are lower?
It absolutely impacts because if you noticed, or maybe you didn't, there were no grade 8 math scores. The state really can't follow growth when kids jump from a grade 6 math to an Algebra 1 to something, there's no way to kind of lump that all together. So you are pulling out your advanced math. Right, so they pull out the advanced math students, the Algebra 1 and the Algebra 2. So it's not just Algebra 2, it's Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 get pulled out. And so what we're seeing is the grade 6, grade 7.
Right, okay. I just wanted to...
It doesn't encompass all of our students, those scores.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board members?
I just want to thank the administration for the presentation. It was, I agree with Emily, we haven't seen a presentation like this, and it was very good. I'd also like to say that I've been coming to board meetings since my son was in elementary school, and he is now 28. So I sat on the other side, and now I'm sitting on this side. And I know that this district cares about the child. Are there quirks? Are there hills? Are there valleys? Yes. But we address them, we do something about it, we implement, we're constantly looking at data. And to think that we don't is, just doesn't sit right with me.
Hey, Ron, real quick,
Yes.
2 seconds.
Go ahead.
No, we didn't have this
You're right.
kind of data for the past 2 years. But when Bruce was here,
You had
you remember
meetings
the
and slides
PowerPoint?
and
yeah,
data.
the slideshows and PowerPoints. So we did dive into that with Park and all the tests before that. But the past couple of years, you're right. But it's not like we've never seen anything like this. I just want to clarify.
And this is
Yeah.
a whole different way to show the data.
Yeah,
This
it's
is much more comprehensive than the old NJ report card that they came out with. The state was really committed to showing more in-depth data to the public so that they can see what's happening in the schools.
I would like to go back to saying like we did, like you said, a couple of years ago when Bruce was here, and not that I'm attorney, I would like to see us track certain age groups and see what, like, you know, whether they came here in first grade or they came here, like my children have gone through the district all completely, just to see like where we're going with it.
And that's probably a really good thing to incorporate into that October report, because in October what we're doing is, those are the pages that I didn't report on tonight, because we already went through it. There are many more pages in this report on the district level that show you the breakdown, grade 3 ELA, grade 4 math, grade 5, you know, and we already reported on that, but that's a really good place that we could create a chart that follows a cohort of students. So, remind me for October.
Mary?
So, a very short statement. I think we all have to acknowledge that all of our schools are different. They have different composition, they have different number of special needs children, they have different populations, and I would not want anybody to take away from the public the thought that we were disappointed in any one of our schools. I, as a board member, am proud of what every single school in the district accomplishes. And while each school is going to recognize that there are certain areas they want to improve, there may be reasons that were not presented here tonight because we weren't talking about individual schools. There may be reasons why those scores may be lower in this area, lower in this school, that school, perfectly reasonable. So I just want the public to take away with them tonight that I personally, and I hope all the board, is very proud of each of our schools and not disappointed in any of our schools because I know that our schools will be working very hard to address any need, any problem that they have had, and we always have to understand there could be a very good reason why there is that problem, one that we're not going to discuss here tonight.
Thank you, Mary. Mike?
All right, I know I spoke before, just briefly. You know, I look at these test scores every year, and I really do go dive into little things about it. You know, what do we have? 97% graduation. What is it? 97%.
Yeah.
0.5 graduation rate. Yes, we want it to be 100.
Absolutely.
I'm a realist. Not everyone, we could try and we could put everything in place for a student to achieve. We could put every single thing we could think of. We could throw every single program. There's going to be 1 or 2 kids that, because of their makeup, they're not going to succeed like we want them to. That's not saying anything about our schools. And you've proven to me, I know, and I think most people here, that you've looked at the problem, figured out things, things don't change overnight. It's a process that does, and the school doesn't rise and fall because of the state, what the state arbitrarily picks as their data points that they're going to use this year. Because I remember, as Elise said a couple of years back, we got penalized because we had kids taking Algebra 2 in 8th grade. We got penalized big time, because the state refused to acknowledge that we had kids taking Algebra 2 in 8th grade, because kids shouldn't have been taking Algebra 2 because they should have only been on Algebra 1. Okay? We got penalized big time. So I'm proud of our schools. I stand by what I said about absenteeism. I'm proud of our schools. And yes, can we always do better? Everyone could always do better. And keep up the good work.
Thank you, and I think that's the takeaway, just real quick. The takeaway is that we are never happy with the status quo. We do excellent. We're going to continue, however, to improve. And just because certain subgroups aren't at risk of not graduating doesn't mean we're not going to include them in our plan. So we're not going to go just by what the state says, that it's only this group of students. No, every group of students is going to benefit from these plans that we're putting in place, and we're always going to strive to do better. And again, no schools in need of improvement, no schools in need of support, no red marks on a lot of our individual schools, but it doesn't mean we're still not saying we want to do better. Even though there were no trends across the schools, and we looked at every school, there were no obvious trends where we are not doing well. But there were pockets, and that's good enough for us to say we want to address it and continue to get better. So.
Thank you, Dr. Labattina.
You're welcome.
At this time, I'm going to open up the meeting to the public for comments on the report first, and then we'll go to public comments on the agenda. Anybody have any questions or comments on the thing? Can we just put
I'm
that
sorry, I'm going to give you your,
so we can sign in?
let me give you this back.
Stephanie, start off.
The top two should be on.
You're welcome.
I know you're listening to us. Allow that.
The first one general question, and then two you can kind of get back to me on. The first general question is this your presentation? Like I see online that I can get to the New Jersey Department of Ed report, but is your presentation available or somewhere I can access that?
We can definitely put it online, absolutely.
Okay.
We'll put a link on the website for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my other two questions, which you can get back to me on because they're just things that were brought up in the report, but the PSYOP for the ELL, you said that everybody is trained, and I'm wondering, is that core courses or... Because I have some ELL students, and I know I don't have that, so I'm just wondering if that's...
It was more the core courses.
Okay.
But when we started it, also the difficulty is the teachers change every year. So last year, we identified those middle and high school teachers that had Ls. That changed this year. So we tried to grab those other teachers this year.
Okay.
So we know we need to continue this all the time because the teachers we need to train are different.
Right.
But no, we have not quite gotten to the specialists yet.
Okay. And then the second, or third, I guess, question, which you can get back to me on, is just about the transition coordinator, and just wondering where that job is going to be, who it's going to, not literally who it's going to be, but
Right.
where that falls within the district employment region. So I can get back to you on that if that's...
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Anybody else? No public? Just state your name, sign your name and state your name and where you're from.
From Fairlawn?
My
My name is Corina Vico. I'm a resident of Fairlawn.
Just sign your name on there, thank you. Okay.
And I have a question. What is a valid score?
What is a valid
So
score?
all of those reports have like number of valid scores and then some kind of grade.
So there are some scores that get voided for various reasons. If a student gets ill during a test, they may have taken part of it, were never able to come back to school to finish it, so their score might get voided. So even though that child sat for the test, they're really not going to get a score out of it, so that would not be a valid score. So there are several situations where that could occur. So that's probably a really great example of when that would occur.
Is it reasonable to have valid scores only 50% of the number of kids who attend the school though?
Typically, I would think not. I would think not for the most part.
Because if, let's say, at Forest Schools, it's about 300 kids who go there, and then valid scores 140?
It's only grades 3, 4, and 5 that take this test. So it's really only half the grade that takes the test. So yes, that would make sense.
Okay. Then me and my friends we're not going to school yet. My kid is too young. We're not going to school yet. So you were saying if I'm interested in a particular school, I will have to go to PTA meetings, right? PTA meetings, right?
If you wanted to learn about an individual school's reports, like you just asked a question about Forest,
Yeah.
that's an easy one. But if you just asked a question about Forest-specific schools, I would attend the Forest PTO meeting when they talk about the Forest individual schools.
Then I go to those meetings if my child is not going to that school yet.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
It's a good way to get around.
I plan to do that. Also, is the board planning to do an analysis looking, let's say, at all the elementary schools? Because, like you're saying, I am disappointed by the scores at the Forest School. It's a big difference if you look at all the elementary schools.
No, that's not what we're planning to do. That's why we had this tonight.
And we do it as an administrative team. Principals do it. We do it as an administrative team. The presentation tonight was on the district scores.
Yeah,
and
district
then,
level. If, let's say, I'm interested in the elementary schools and why one school is behind. If, let's say, if you look at the Forest School.
if you would like that, then I would recommend that you contact Dr. Lacatina or Mr. Garcia, and they can meet with you to go over that. We will not speak about individual schools publicly because we're one district.
Okay,
No, I'm just saying, that's the way we choose to do it, so that's why we did this as a district report.
Okay, that's totally fine. So I'll just, all my questions to
You can contact superintendent or...
If you have questions about an individual school, you should speak with that building principal at that school first.
Okay.
So that they can explain their school's individual schools.
If I'm not happy with the answer, or if it...
There's a chain of command that goes from there. If you're not happy with the answer, then you can call Dr. Lacatina, and if you're not happy there, then you can contact me. And then if you're not happy with me, you can contact the board. All 9 of them will get back.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's what I said, we're going to put you and
rewrite them in.
You're just gonna have to put a check.
pre-write you in, pre-write Dawn in.
First, yeah, this is great. I mean, I've been going to board meetings for I think 6, maybe 7 years, and I don't remember something this comprehensive and also easy to understand as well. And also at my PTO meeting at Lindcrest, Mrs. D went through basically the same format report. And
they all look the same, basically.
It was great to be able to see and understand the data too. I think sometimes the data used to be presented in such a way which you really didn't kind of take away anything from it. And to find that our biggest problem is absenteeism, I think is a pretty good place to be. The one thing I was wondering as you talked about putting in, the absentee policy, because I think when you really analyze it, it's not sickness that keeps people out. It's the travel. And one of the things we talked about at Lindcrest is letting people know about the ability to disenroll and re-enroll and to homeschool and all that. Is that something that you plan on communicating as you look to battle this one problem or whatever?
It's a conversation we continue to have.
I know people go on a month trip, and next year with the lack of that vacation, there's probably more of those.
Also, remember what Dr. Lacatina said. If you're in school for 30 days, you're sick 3 days, you're considered
But I'm not
chronic absenteeism. But
that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about the 15, 20-day trip.
I know, but I'm saying when you withdraw and then you come back and you're only in school as a registered student for 100 and something days, your chronic absenteeism, your rate of hitting that number, say you then get the flu for 2 weeks or whatever it is, can throw it off. So everyone just assumes it's 180 days, but when we have people who are withdrawing, and because they're going away for 2 months at a time or a month at a time, then they're coming back in, their chances of hitting that are a lot greater. So yeah.
And I think the message we really want to give to parents is the importance of being in
Yeah,
school.
don't go
It's
away.
really, it doesn't, it's
But
just
you're not
so
gonna,
important to be.
there's minds you're not gonna change it.
Absolutely, yeah, I was just gonna say something like that, like, you know, people who make comments, like, we have to educate the parents about it. You're, as a parent, in my opinion, I'm speaking about for me only, my job is to make sure my children go to school every day. If I choose to go away for 6 months, then it's a problem, you know what, then you need to take your kids out of homeschool, seriously.
Well, as I said, there are people that go on that month trip,
Yeah.
or that 6-week trip.
Nothing you can do about it, get on the game.
We're probably gonna have more of those next year with the lack of without the February break, you know, the calendar is what it is. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. All right, I thank everybody for that. Now, I'm just gonna open up public comments on any agenda items. Probably got any? No, I'm just gonna go right to that. I'm going a little bit away from the thing right now. It's my laurel. You know, I see no comments on that.
Well,
Okay.
okay, I guess I was just confused.
I'm sorry, yes, I am jumping around. I'm doing the public comments on the agenda. I'm with the public, I'm gonna stay with the public right now.
Okay.
So I'm making a little adjustment, okay? I apologize to everybody, but let's go.
Okay. I'm back.
No, I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's being nasty, I'm saying we're gonna keep moving on.
Okay, so if we jump to, it's on page,
Yeah, give us a page.
page 8. I have a couple of items, so, on page 8, I am just wondering, how the suspensions are recorded, who do you get that information from the different buildings?
From the building level administration.
Building administrator? Okay. Okay, next on page, sorry.
All right, take your time.
It is page 18. And I am then in conjunction with that, referring to 18, it is C, letter C, approval of schedule rate for hourly employees / substitutes. And I believe that's referencing this sheet, if I am not mistaken.
Correct. Yes, you're correct.
And my question is on the, not the on the hourly employees rates, on the side, that it doesn't say substitutes, it's the, I guess I'm assuming that this is the front side, the 2019-2020 school year. The last item there, the security guard's aide, I'm wondering what security guard aide position that is.
I think those are security positions that they've been, you know, non-bargaining ones at the high school and possibly middle school.
And so,
Want us to follow up and get back to you on that?
sure, that'd be great. Question mark.
They're not the ones in your contract.
Okay. All right, if I can get, you know, a very firm answer, that would be fantastic. Letter D, I will defer to the actual board meeting to comment on that.
Me too.
And
That was
D, on that same page.
that same page.
That same page, but I will hold that, because I believe I'm supposed to hold that off, right?
Yes.
Okay. The next is on page 23. F9A. Can you please tell me the number of staff that is being contracted for with Effective Schools Solutions for that $570,000? Five people. And, okay, so along with that, I'm going to restate what I have stated multiple times at board meetings in reference to the contracting, the outside contracting of Effective School Solutions, and I know Care Plus isn't on here, but I'm assuming that at some point their contract is going to be on a board minutes, again, an agenda, and I believe that these should be district employees. I believe for that $570,000, you would be able to get pretty close to that same amount to pay for actual employees of the district. For several reasons, but at this point, my biggest rationale is that these people who are contracted are limited to the number of students that they can assist in the district, and thereby not, if they are actual employee of the district, they can assist any student in the district with the needs that they may have, and it seems to me that at this point, some of the students, I'm not saying that, once again, I believe that there are students who need help. I believe that it's that the program is positive and the fact that it does help students, but it is limited to the number of students that they can assist, and that there have been situations that I am aware of where there's a situation that occurs, and because they are not a student that is selected to be part of this particular program, the individuals who are helping will not help other students who are in need. And that, to me, is of great concern, because if it was a member of our district itself, they would not hesitate to help someone else, even though it wasn't one of their cases that they had to deal with.
You could agree to disagree on that statement.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And I believe that's all the questions I have at this point. All right, thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else, public, any comments or questions on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll now go to the board. Comments on the agenda. And we'll go back to committee reports, so I'll just bring up Mike.
Just since we're there, F9, page 23. Just Nick, if you could, just like explain it to me again, because this is the way I understand. Explain if I understand it correctly. For the middle and high school, we contract out to Effective School Solutions, who picks the most vulnerable kids in those schools to work with. But when we have instances like this past week where we need extra help in, they do help, right? And then we still have our people that are in the schools like they always have been when there's crises or when there's things, when there's kids that need help. There's always someone at the school to help them, correct?
That's accurate.
Correct, and it's part of their job description.
We're talking about a 3-tier mental health program that we have here in Fairlawn. The first tier being our staff, our child study team, our guidance counselors, our case managers, whoever it may be. Then you have Care Plus as a 2nd-tier intervention, which would be the next level. The third most at-risk tier would be Effective School Solutions. You're talking about the most at-risk students that we may have in district who are receiving individual, group, and family counseling on a daily basis. In addition to going into the home and working with students who may not want to come to school, who have school anxiety, who are going into the bedroom and giving them coping skills. In addition to the fact that when we suffered a tragedy last week on Sunday night at 10 o'clock, they were probably the 2nd or 3rd phone call I made to make sure that we had resources in our district on our week off. In addition to the fact that they were the ones that linked us up with the therapy dogs that were walking the hallways of TJ Middle School today. So I think we're getting a little bit more than that. Sorry if I feel a little bit passionate about it.
No,
everybody knows that the mental health thing was something I felt strongly about at a district level.
I just know that mental health is a big buzzword right now, and I know other districts and stuff like that haven't even gotten near the point that we are in as far as doing any of the stuff that we're doing for mental health. So I appreciate the mental health initiative.
Emily.
Okay, so I want to comment on page 5 of the draft agenda, which is the enrollment report.
Go ahead.
call attention to the fact that Westmoreland School has had an additional 37 students over the past year. That's about 2 classrooms. I mean, I know it's not all at one grade level, but it's equivalent to about 2 additional classrooms of kids. Mills has again another 29 students over the past year. We are definitely not out of the woods with our enrollment issues, especially at particular schools, and I just want to again sound the alarm bells for the administration to stay ever vigilant of these developments. I know the planning for the middle school expansion to be done a year from now is a high priority, but we still have next year, of course, to deal with.
Just to answer, just to give you a point of information, we've been on, Nick and I have been in conversation the last month, watching these numbers and talking about certain things, and they're working on different things right now, just to let you know, every
As a
day.
board member, I'd like to be in on some of those conversations. As a board, I would like all 9 of us to
Oh,
be able to.
you will be, we were just talking stuff. We're not-
So I want to just state specifically, Nick, do you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to say that what I did last year was I gave an update as we got a little bit further along about where we are with our enrollment numbers and what the trends are starting to look like for September. Dr. Lactina, myself, Mr. Franco, we've been meeting tomorrow to start looking at our numbers again. As I said, I think one of the last meetings or 2 meetings ago, that we're constantly looking at those numbers on a monthly basis, and then obviously as we get closer to the year, more of a bi-weekly, weekly, than a daily basis. But when I hear what you're saying about, hitting that alarm bell signal, it's just a little bit too early for us to do that. But we are monitoring that, and you will get an update as a board when I think it's a good time.
So I just wanted to say some specific points of information as a work session of the board for the full board to hear the points of information that I think would be helpful to us as a group. First of all, I would like to know what the kindergarten registration numbers are for each of the elementary schools, given that the initial wave of registration, I believe, before April 15th, was the date where current residents were told they had to register by. So if those preliminary numbers could be helpful for us to get a sense before the spring and summer real estate business, season really picks up. Also, I think we've been asking for several months now, and just wanted to keep it on the list, not saying like should have had this yet, but just saying to keep this on the priority list of information I think the board could benefit from seeing is information on the software's policy.
We're going to have a policy meeting specifically on policy, because we have to have just a specific policy meeting to talk to Ms. Panaggi about it. And we've been in discussion, not hiding from the board, we're trying to find a date, and we know Softport is up for revision, we're all working on that policy also.
Okay, great, because we did have an initial round of discussions around the soft border policy, but we haven't taken a vote on anything. And so now we should have even more updated information on how that policy is working and what needs to be done. And then the last thing, point of information on this topic, I think that would be helpful, and this is something I mentioned last month, but I just want to mention it again, is to not just track the number of students who are moving into Radburn Crossings as the new multi-family housing development. It's new to Fairlawn, but a way to take our current student body and see the number of students that are coming from apartment units of varying sizes. I'm thinking especially Exchange Place as a, right, Exchange Place? No, the Promenade, sorry. Let's get it mixed up. They look the same in there. The Promenade, the Fairlawn Promenade. As a newer development that's supposed to have 1, 2, 3-bedroom apartments, that there's kind of this sense of like, oh, we don't have too many students coming from there, but they are zoned for Westmoreland. Westmoreland is growing. I'd like to get a better handle on.
But where's Exchange Place?
Promenade.
Where is the Exchange Place? You thought it looked.
Down by Wall Street, Exchange Place?
15
Those commuters.
Jersey City, right?
Yes, we're keeping track of it. We are maintaining a list
Of
students moving in multi-dwelling units.
But the Promenade is already there.
I know, but you had asked us last month to start keeping a list of any new students coming in that are living in the new housing developments other than the Promenade.
So I'm glad to clarify my request. I actually had in mind to look at our current students coming from the Promenade to understand if the kind of narrative around, oh, we don't have that many students coming from 1 to 3 bedroom new developments. I'm thinking especially as our town considers additional developments that might look like the promenade, for us to actually have the data to see if that assumption is correct or not. I think that would be helpful planning for us as a board and a district to be able to answer that question with data we should already have.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And, welcome.
I want to echo Emily's sound bell. I also want to sound that bell on the numbers growing. You forgot to include Memorial, by the way. 36, the number of increase as of compared to last year. You know, I would like us as a board. I know I mentioned it, and you know, maybe you know you thought about it. But we need to take a position as a board, and I know you have spoken to you know the municipal leaders, Ron. But we need to sound that bell as a board and send a formal communication to the councils and tell them that we don't have room for more development. We don't have room for more development. They need to tighten up their ordinances, their zoning, whatever they're doing, because we cannot afford more disproportionate development in this town. It's unfair. It's very unfair. We don't have the room. We don't have the room. And, you know, we cannot just keep having referendums. It costs a lot of money. We need maybe have a resolution at the next meeting, or I don't know when, and said we, the Board of Education of Fair Lawn, call upon the council and the mayor to do whatever they need to do to stop this overdevelopment. It's destroying our schools. We don't have the room. We don't have the room. We're expanding to middle schools, hiring all these staff, increasing all these taxes. I would like us, respectfully, board members, to have a letter, a resolution, something, a communication signed by everyone here to the mayor of Fair Lawn and the council, and tell them this is a crisis we have. We cannot have more development. And we all due respect to my fellow board member who made a very persuasive argument with the sounding of the bell. I think the promenade, we don't need to know how many. We don't need to really know how many kids are coming from the promenade. We already know that they have 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, and those apartments are being promoted, marketed. Like, you have no idea. And this is the reason why a lot of those apartments are empty, because they're asking an astronomical amount of money, precisely because people can have as many kids as they can fit in those apartments, because we have the schools in Fair Lawn, and we don't have the room for all these apartments being brought up in this town. So we already have the crisis as is. So now we need to send a communication to the council and the mayor of Fair Lawn to tell them stop allowing the planning board and all these boards to allow all this disproportionate, unfair to the people of this town. Because we are not going to do another referendum 4 years from sorry, I meant to say, I am not going to support another referendum to expand more schools. Because the real problem is we have too many multi-family units in Fair Lawn. We have, everywhere you go, you see another complex. You see 2-family house. You see apartments everywhere. We have to stop. And if we don't take a position as a board, here you go, mayor and council. Now pass it on to the other boards and do what you need to do. We need to do that. I understand you, respectfully, I'm saying, Ronnie, respectfully as our spokesperson, as a president, you have gone above and beyond. But I think maybe us as a board need to send a formal communication and vote on it and ring the bell, all of us together, because, there's a few of us who are saying this, a few of us, everybody needs to be saying it, and the way we all say it is we will put it on the agenda, and we send that communication to the council and the mayor, because, perhaps they want to do something about it, because we are not going to have another development. We're not going to have another development like the one in Plaza Road. I would like, with all due respect, on page 23, F9, I would like to have a copy of the contract. As a board member, I would like to request a copy of the contract with Effective School Solutions. I would like to know, is this, Mr. Norcia, is this one of the initiatives?
Yes.
Okay. How are students selected?
There's a referral process.
Okay. Is this a first year or the second year we work? Second year.
This is a contract for a third year.
And if someone makes a complaint about the service they're providing, do we log, do we register, do we have a record of such complaint in writing?
I really don't know what you're right.
If someone has a complaint about this provider, do we have a system, does the district have a system in place to track that complaint? Like, we have a written complaint about this provider.
You know what, it's really, due to the highly confidential nature of the small population that they serve, I really just don't feel comfortable having that conversation here.
Okay.
Thank you for understanding.
Okay. But I would like to get that. Yeah, and I would like us to speak with one voice in regards to this overcrowding nonstop. We're not going to be heard just by one or two people. We need to have something and put it, have the media, something, make a press release. We're going to have to hire 3 more. We have three schools with over 25 students change from last year. That's another classroom teacher. The money has to come from somewhere. So, we have to send a communication to the mayor of Fairlawn and the council so they stop this overdevelopment in this town. We're not going to destroy the character of our community.
Okay. Done. 3 questions?
Yes. Are you willing to
I'm willing to do
entertain?
I'm willing to do anything, and I've talked to her. I will tell you this, though. As bad as we are, thank God you don't live in Paramus, because they just rezoned Route 17, and they got to come up with 17,000 housing units to meet their state quota for COA. So I already talked to the CO in that town and 2 councilmen. I said, good luck. See what jazz. Gene's going. Gene's up
Okay.
next.
Look, you may not know this, but when I was president, and I know Ron is president, we've had discussions with Nick and with the mayor and with the borough manager.
Which one?
Mayor Peluso, and before him, Mayor Cosgrove. Okay, we had discussions, and everybody, to a person on that council, is not for more multi-housing development. Nobody on the council wants it. Nobody on the board wants it. I don't think most people in town want it. So in their defense, I mean, it sounds to me, standing over here, that you want us to, send them a resolution because they don't hear us. They do hear us. They've heard us for years. They fought Bradford Crossings for 7.5 years in court. They didn't want it because they knew what was going to be a stress on the services, school, fire, police. They are completely, 100% against any more large developments in this town. And from what I'm understanding, and Ron can back me up on this, I don't think there's a lot of places left in Fairlawn to build residential.
Yes.
One big one.
There's a huge one.
Okay. I said there's not a lot. I didn't say there was none.
I can tell you exactly where it is.
All right, well, I didn't interrupt you, so maybe you could let me finish. How's that, Sam? What I'm saying is this. Sticking a thumb in the council's eye and say, hey, guys, do your job, I don't think it's the right way to go about it. I think we've had a very good, a very cordial relationship with them. All right? Most of them have kids in the district, or some of them have kids in the district. They understand. They understand that if they build a 500-unit building or a series of buildings, it's going to be murder on everybody. So for you to get all hot and bothered that we're not speaking as one voice, that the council doesn't know, they do know. We've had these discussions for years. And I know Nick and Ron had a meeting not too long ago about it. And when I was president, I had a meeting with Nick and the town council, or with the mayor and Jimmy Van Kroonigen. So, everybody who's involved understands. And as far as the planning board goes, and the zoning board, pretty sure they're independent of the council. I know they're picked by the council, okay, but the council doesn't tell them how to vote. It doesn't tell them what to do. No, so for us to tell them, well, you give your marching orders to the zoning board and to the other boards, it doesn't work that way. So I'm just saying that we all agree, and I don't think there's anybody, except for developers, that are probably eyeing, like a bunch of vultures, certain tracts of land, that anybody wants to do that. And I think the last one they approved was over 55. So that's what I'm saying is, I don't want to start a war with the council and tell them, hey, you guys do your job, because I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think Ron has a very good relationship with the mayor, and I know Nick does. So I think that's, that's what I'm going to say.
One of the things that when Gene was president and myself, when we met with the mayor and Judy McBranigan, was that they share, anytime anybody brings a plan to the town, to the planning board or the zoning board, a copy has to come to our office, correct, Brooke? So we receive copies of whether it's 2 units or a store and an apartment on top of it. So we do receive and we do get an idea and we do express our concern to them when they do come our way. So I mean, that open line of communication is very helpful so that we're not blindsided and find out at the 11th hour this one's going up. At least we have an idea of what they're trying to bring into Fair Lawn and what isn't coming into Fair Lawn.
Can I respond to?
1 second. Let Mike go first.
I want
We'll just keep it short. Let's get
No, obviously.
No, I'm just saying.
I do, I agree with the sentiment of doing something, but first of all, we have a shared services committee. Okay, and the shared services committee should be dealing with this. This has been a problem. That's our best way of doing it, is getting into those planning board meetings and saying, this wouldn't be good for the school system because we cannot house the students. So unless you make that case right to the planning board and the zoning board are both, the council cannot tell them what to do, actually. They're independent of the council. They have a council member on it, I believe, as a liaison, but they're independent of the council. And that's what Deputy Mayor John Cosgrove had told me.
All right, looking, last one, and then I'm just going to
Just
say
to respond
something.
to
I'm just going to say something and then
What my friend Gene stated. My comments were not to go and disrespect the council. My comments were not go and not have a good relationship. My comments were not tell them to do something they're not supposed to do. My comments were not let's keep doing what we have been doing for the past years. And that's exactly what I'm getting at. If we keep doing the same thing, we're going to keep getting the same results. I don't speak for the council. I speak for the people who put me in this seat. And I don't speak for the mayor, I don't speak for the council. I cannot say that everybody in the council, this is a new council. This is a new mayor. Times have changed. There are new people on this board that have different priorities and different things worry them. Well, this is something that worries me because we don't have the space to put the kids. We're expanding 2 schools. We're hiring more staff. We're increasing taxes. We have to provide the services. We're sounding the bell alarm in every meeting. How does it hurt anyone here that we send a formal communication to the council and the mayor? It's not the same mayor. It's not the same council. And with what I meant when I say about the zoning and the planning board, they appoint the planning board members.
Yes,
and we have a very different planning board and zoning board than what we have in the very past. Now, we know Fair Lawn is a hot commodity in the area, and we're going to have about 100 enrollment increases a year. So if we already know if we already know that we need to do whatever it takes, and nobody's going to stop being friends with anybody here because we send them a letter stating this is our former position as a board member. No one's going to stop being friends with you. No one. They're going to start having coffee with you because we send a communication as a board.
All right, I'm gonna let Elise speak, and then I'm gonna end it here. You're gonna speak, and I got one thing to say.
I just wanted to say that, just in deference to what you guys are discussing, maybe you should go to the Shared Services Committee so the dialogue can start again.
I spoke to the mayor today about other things, and I have already talked to him about scheduling a shared services meeting. Okay, first of all, I understand what you're saying, but Gene had had a conversation with the new mayor, Mayor Peluso, as he did with Mayor Cosgrove. I'm on the Open Space Committee. I can tell you this, the barrister that they built at the end of Saddle River, what do you call it, past Saddle River on Fairlawn Avenue, the Open Space Committee fought that for 5 years. The Radburn thing they fought for 7 years. They are staying on top of it. You have to understand something. One of our biggest problems is, if you notice, if you drive around town, and you can say what you want about planning boards, zoning boards, I'm in construction. There are people buying houses that are old capes, knocking them down and making them 4 or 5 bedroom homes. And as long as they stay within the restrictions of height and zoning approval, there is nothing you can do with them. And I'm going to tell you something. You want to try to fight that, you will have lawsuits like you can't believe, and people will win. And then the town is not going to spend that kind of money. So that's where I know I drive around town, and all I constantly see, because I can tell you real now, just one last thing. I grew up in Fort Lee, and I was just there last week to go to the cemetery for my parents, and every house that was a single house is now a duplex with 5 bedrooms on each side. So now when you only had 3 bedrooms, now you have 10 bedrooms. And they are going through the roof in Fort Lee. I mean, they're exploding. They have no place to put anything. So I will speak to the mayor about a shared services meeting, and we'll get together. We have a few other things we've got to talk about, and then we'll talk about that. We'll get it taken care of. I'll bring the sentiments of the board to him and the council. So
We can't have it on a resolution to vote as a board?
We will take it as a board, and we'll talk about it in closed session. Okay. Do you want to say something, Mary? Last? Yeah, no, I'm getting to that next, Mary. I know, I'm sorry I screwed you up, but I hadn't. All right, committee reports. We're going to take the committee reports, then we're going to go right into the business meetings, and then that's pretty much it. Go ahead, Mary.
Personnel committee met. Personnel committee is going to report in closed session, and it's going to be a significant time. So I want you to all notice the clock and realize that we may be in closed session for a long time.
Thank you, Mary.
That's my report.
Mike, you got a committee report.
Yeah, education committee. We met tonight for the education committee. I apologize because I think I owe you a report, and I will send them out with the new reports, the 2 new reports that I have for tonight. Tonight, the first thing we talked about was Sanford Harmony. We had a bunch of teachers that came in, gave us an overview of the program and how the program has worked. If you remember, we took the programs began last year. We talked about it. We approved it in January. Finally, it started in the district, and the teachers were so enthusiastic. And what it deals with is basically the emotional and social growth of our children, of our students. And now what they're doing is they're tweaking it to make sure that where's the best time during the day to put these? What are the best lessons to do with this? And what I took out of it was some of the positives so far that the teachers have said is the students aren't interrupting each other as much. They're much more reflective. They appreciate diversity. They said a story about a student that shared with the class, because they have individual time where they pair up, and they have times where they meet up as a whole class. Both of those things happen every elementary school class every day. And the simplest way to say the meetup time is kind of like a show and tell time, but more on emotional growth. And they're telling a story about someone that came in and gave a presentation to the class on the Chinese New Year's, and the kids were so excited about it that at lunchtime they kept that conversation going with each other. because they had so many questions about it and thought it was so cool. They called it a brain break. It's getting them to use like common language and stuff like that. I can't get over what these teachers, how passionate they were about what they were doing and how they love this program and how our kids are actually growing emotionally. Again, another tier of our mental health initiative. So that was a great presentation, and I will send that out to the board. We also had a meeting on transition, and the main part of transitioning was our special ed kids, because legally at age 14, they have to start making goals, and they have to start having a plan to transition out of our schools and into life. And that starts at age 14, but the big thing was, that some of our students stay till age 21, and that structured learning component, we learned a lot about what they were looking for the structured learning component and how they want to tweak what they're doing in the high school in general, just to make sure that we're doing everything we can for our special needs kids, especially our most vulnerable and what's the word I'm looking for? Most neediest kids, on how to get them. On how to get how to make them successful in life, because with their particular disabilities. So thank you very much for both presentations.
You have a committee report, or you got a question? We're not at new business yet. I'm going to just go, anybody else have committee reports? Okay, so now committee reports. New meeting dates. We're looking to have a Building and Grounds Finance Committee meeting on May 6th at 7 o'clock. Anybody? Thank you for coming. Appreciate your support. Anybody in that committee have any problems with that, May 6th? 7 o'clock.
What's the date of the regular meeting?
Regular, which one, in May?
The two meetings.
May 13th and May 20th. So we're going to talk about that later, the May 13th. I'll let you know. I might be able to be at 6:30. I just have to, because I might have something after work. So I might not be able to get here until 7. May 6th is good for that, so we're doing it.
Regular meeting
It's the 13th and the 20th.
is the 23rd.
23rd?
No, you have the date wrong.
That's what I have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, Mike.
And the committee, the work
Work
session
session
is
is the 20th.
So,
Work session is the 20th.
When is it?
wait, hold on, sorry.
I'm sorry.
May 6th, we're shooting for Buildings and Grounds Finance Committee,
Yes.
correct? And we'll get back to you on the time. May 20th, at the last board meeting, we moved the work session date to May 20th. I made a recommendation to the board at that meeting that we could cancel the work session rather than put it into the same week, which is Monday and Thursday of the board meeting, similar to this week. At that point, everyone said no, they did not want to cancel it, which is fine. However, the board just received their invitation that we get every year to the dinner at Columbia Bank. All the board members are invited, administration's invited. It's a very nice dinner. It's May 20th, the Monday night.
But that's when Matt Lee's coming,
Matt Lee's coming on May 20th.
the work session.
Okay.
Have to change them.
There you
We're
go. So-
gonna either have to change him or
Okay.
do something.
Change Matt.
I know the board
See if
enjoy.
we can, but we're supposed to be setting the goals.
I understand that, but you know what? I'll talk to Matt, the president. I'll call Matt. I'll reach out to Matt tomorrow. I'll work it out with you and him there. It's just, this is a big thing that we always go to. It's one big thanks.
Yeah, no, I know that,
They support
I know
this
that.
district
It's
tremendously.
just
So
that.
to be invited to that's an honor. So,
He'll already be the president, so it is an honor that every board member.
I'll talk to Matt tomorrow. I'll get it over.
You
I'll
only
get
used
it
to be
straight.
the president, so it is a real honor that every board member is getting.
I have a question.
Why don't we, what we can do, why don't you let me look at options?
Good
We'll
idea.
reach out to Matt, we'll see if there's any options,
Yeah.
we'll play with dates. It doesn't need to be necessarily a work session like we're having tonight. It could be just a meeting like that with Matt. What's that?
Retreat.
Or Matt is
No,
limited with
he can't
retreats.
do a retreat.
He can't,
He
he's
can do
limited with
1
dates.
hour during the week, but he can't do another Saturday
Yeah,
retreat.
he said it was too hard for him, because he has to do every district
No.
do retreats.
So we can come for
So,
an hour.
we'll read the, I have to reach out to Matt on something else anyway, so I
All
can.
right.
You and I will talk about
So we don't
But
have a
again,
date
you
for
gotta
workshop
get some
meeting?
fluid dates because we all have issues, you know?
What?
And I'm going on the 15th.
We know that. We'll get to Matt tomorrow, and then we'll get back to everybody by tomorrow night.
What was the problem with the 16th?
17.
Why did we move it from the 16th?
Because several central office administrators are going to be in conference. You can leave now.
Can they be?
Whatever date you get for Matt Lee, can you try and piggyback the education meeting onto that? Like,
No, listen, I'm
if you
gonna
could,
be, we'll talk about
We're
it.
gonna talk about that.
Otherwise
We'll talk
we'll do it. Otherwise we'll do it at
Yeah, but we're gonna talk about it later, all right?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, what, you had a question?
I just.
Yeah, I'm new on the board. Columbia Bank, do they do business with the district?
Yes, they go our checking account, they donate a ton of money. So if you notice the Steam building, they own every scoreboard in our district, in our town.
Okay, do we have, would
You don't
this,
have to attend.
no, will this be something that, on our annual ethics declaration, we
No.
will have to declare?
No,
Huh?
no, this is general.
What's the value of this?
It's just general, I don't know what the value is, it's just the general.
Okay.
You got a question on the meetings and things? Okay, well, let me finish up the meetings, I'll get to you with the new business. Everybody done with the meeting?
No.
Okay, we're gonna, no, Mary, let's go.
May 7th, there's a subcommittee meeting for negotiations on May 7th.
That's Eugene and me, right?
Yeah, then there's, May 13th is negotiations.
Yeah, well, that ain't gonna
Gotta
happen, we're gonna have to
start
cancel
gotta
that.
start putting the negotiations down in the meetings so that people realize that you can't schedule, you know.
No,
Like you
I
have to
have-
have more
I have-
comprehensive,
Okay.
list of committee, of
They're on the
meetings.
list.
They're on
Got
the
them
list.
on the list?
They've been on
I
the
didn't
list,
see
that's been
them.
sent out, yes. Policy, please, when do you want to do the policy?
Any day you tell me, beginning of May, whenever you want it.
You want, how long is the policy, please meeting about? But, no, what?
How long is it going to be, you saying?
No, I'm saying, how long do you think we're gonna need, about an hour and a half?
I think you need an hour and a half, yeah.
Okay, all right, so, do you wanna try to pick,
Do it after building
I was gonna say, wanna try to piggyback it after buildings and grounds?
Sure.
We'll go 6:30 with buildings and grounds, I'll figure it out somehow.
This is the 6th?
The 6th, and then we'll go 7:30, we'll go, because we only need like half hour.
May 6th.
7 o'clock.
You're gonna be surgery, you're gonna be in a bed, or walking.
No,
Hopefully you
no,
walk-
May
Hopefully you're
6th.
walking down the hill.
May 6th.
May 6th.
Yeah, but we all come to policy.
This one, everybody's coming to the policy meeting, yes.
7:30, you said.
7:30 for the policy.
Got it. Got it.
That's all right.
Which nursing home?
Stand tight.
All right.
Oh, it was over here.
Any other we got the policy meeting, we got we know about the negotiations, Barry, we'll straighten all that out. Anything else?
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. We will get back to you, Mike, with the education meeting and stuff. Okay, new business, Emily.
I promise to make this brief. I had a long list, but I'm not going to say everything on the list. So one is with the website. Is the administration able to test the website with any parent users of it or the mobile before launch live?
We haven't tested it with any parents yet before it launched live. However, what we did, we spoke with numerous districts that already have already made this transition to this website, and it had nothing but unbelievable references.
Okay. I also went to the Green Fair meeting there at Memorial. So
Yes, I
was
know.
really impressed by the middle school students who presented on their initiatives at the Environmental Club. But one thing that I learned from that I wanted to bring to the attention of the full board is that some school districts are passing policies to be styrofoam free. And I know we're going to negotiate a new contract for food services, and I just wanted to put forth the idea of
On the list, right?
looking into no use of styrofoam in food prep.
actually, it's kind of funny you brought that up, because when I was down in school boards, a lot of the food services are starting going out of trend. So when I was talking to Brooke about the RFPs, I said one of the things is we're trying to make sure we get somebody who wants to start from first, so on top of it.
Good.
Just like I'm actually looking at propane buses eventually.
Okay.
People don't think I don't look at this.
I
Go ahead.
also wanted to ask if the board ever had a liaison to Fairlawn's Green Team, if there's ever been any connection between the board?
I don't think we have.
I think we have an administrator, Ron Durso, just left our science.
Yes, Ron
supervisor.
Durso.
There's a connection, but not the board.
Okay, so that might be something to consider for next calendar year in terms of our liaison positions, something to explore to have someone from meetings.
What
And
else?
then the only other thing I will say now, or ask for now, is as we prepare to set our board goals, I would like to request that the superintendent goals and the district goals be shared in advance so that we can review those as we think about our board goal.
No problem. Go. Mark?
Yes, I wanted to piggyback on Emily with the Green Fair. I'm on the property maintenance committee, and we were trying to...
Really, you gotta start cleaning up now.
We were trying to think about ways that we could help, and I brought forth a recommendation, if it's okay with the board and okay with the administration, that we do something about plastics. So we were thinking about having, whether it be once a month, once a week, or whatever, in the cafeteria, to do away with using plastic in its entirety for the straws, if that's possible.
On Middle Street.
We'll look into it. I can tell you something, you're gonna see a lot of that disappear. So. I mean, it's flat out. This is all over now, the world. Well, plastic bag bans, straws, everything else. So. All right, anybody else on the new business? But just make it quick. Just get your point across.
Were we supposed to approve in April a comprehensive equity plan?
No.
No.
It's coming up in May.
It's for May?
Yes.
The school health nursing services plan. Do you have
On
it?
an annual, yeah, we have on an annual basis.
When does it come up for approval?
I
For
think it
next year?
came up actually in the summertime.
Oh, in the summer?
Because I remember that from doing a
Yes.
QSAC review.
Yes.
All right, the rest I don't want to say.
All right, anybody else? Okay, being that that's it, I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
No, I had public comments already. I went over. You want to go over it again?
On the agenda.
I did the agenda and I did the public comments on the report. What other public comments? No, I'm saying, you have something else you want to say? Go ahead. I'm going to try it. I'm going to be honest with you. I know it's a little confusing for everybody. We're going to streamline a little bit. I'm going to
No,
try
I'm
to keep
saying,
things.
you had specific.
Yeah, I know. I had the public comments about the report, then I went to public comments about the agenda. I just figured everybody would do all their public comments at that same time, but say whatever you
I
want.
was trying to follow the rules.
Go ahead, don't
That's
worry
it, follow the rules, I like that. Go ahead.
I get yelled at when I don't follow.
I'm not yelling at you. I'm glad.
Not you.
Motion to open the meeting.
We didn't have a-
I'll let Thomas, David.
we didn't have
No, no,
a-
no.
I didn't have a second, okay, go ahead.
Okay, quick question. You just mentioned Chartwells and RFP, so that is being open to RFP, because we had the Chartwells representative come to Lindcrest right before vacation, really didn't talk about being short-term, they talked about long-term. Is it possible that they might be replaced next year, or?
Possibility. RFP went out. They got to bid it,
Okay.
just like everybody else does.
We're going through the RFP process
We're
right
through
now.
the RFP process right now.
Okay.
So there's a possibility, you know.
And it didn't sound like there was any doubt.
They're
Very confident people.
They're confident, you know. It's like a baseball player sounding like they're going to bid nothing here. They're
Good
confident.
salesman. One other question, not that I support it anyway, but I hope you're not going to talk about the resolution in closed session like you mentioned, because I don't think that's.
No,
I don't think that's.
No.
You said that, that's all.
I know.
No, I'm not talking
All
about
right. I
resolution.
just wanted to-
What resolution?
No, send to the board.
Your resolution.
No.
You're right,
I
can't talk about
I can't talk about that close.
I know, you said that, that's all this.
Just, can I say something about?
No, that's it. Anybody else got public comments? No? I need a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? We'll take a 5 minute.
Have a good night.
5 minutes.